Hi everyone, welcome back to this series titled A Very Opinionated ASP.NET Core Architecture. I think as these sessions go on, I'm going to try to say that name faster and faster, so that way I don't talk about it too much. Unfortunately, I'm still going to go on a tangent about it at the beginning because it's just the stupid joke at this point. Anyway, hey, welcome back to episode 9 titled GitHub Actions Build Pipeline. So, if you watched the previous video, it was number 8. I can't remember what the title was, but if you watched number 8, then you're ready for this one. If you haven't, you kind of missed some stuff. So this is part 2 of 2 separate videos around the same concept. So in the previous video, we created an actual build for our application using Cake, so that way we can write the whole thing in C# and test everything locally on our machines. Today we're going to go ahead and take that, and we're going to make a couple of changes to to the actual build artifacts that we create at the end, and then we're going to go ahead and add a GitHub Actions to this, so that way we can actually go ahead and run this build, all of our fun C# stuff. We're going to go ahead and run all of that from GitHub Actions, and so conceptually, this concept works across any kind of runner you have out there, right? Azure DevOps, GitLab. I forget what Atlassian has. Jenkins? Is Atlassian? Is that Atlassian Jenkins? Whatever Atlassian has, and then also Jenkins. And so these concepts will work for everything, even though I'm only demoing the stuff specifically with GitHub Actions. All right, and then the very last thing that we're going to do, as you can kind of see on the bottom, we're going to make sure all this works. I do spend some time before this video just going through testing code, making sure this all works, but it's a little hard to do that with anything that runs on a build server because it's YAML. You're not really testing that locally. I didn't want to have this video and then show you, hey, here's the 30 failures. So as we all always have right before or whenever we're creating some kind of new build pipeline. So we'll just see what happens, and maybe I'll have to have a ton of edits to this video or not. We'll see what happens. All right, so this slide was in the previous video, and just a reminder of the thinking behind this. So we're still going to have for our build some stuff done in C#, so that way we can run and test that stuff locally on our machine, but a bunch of other stuff is still going to be done, unfortunately, in YAML, and in this case run through GitHub Actions. And the line that I like to go through is this something that needs to be run in some form of proprietary way on the build server? So an example of that would be, is this something that is connecting directly to a GitHub thing? So for an example of that would be, when I'm running code on my local machine, it's pretty common within work or even for a handful of side projects, I will go ahead and create I will be connecting to a private NuGet repository, right? So, there's a lot of stuff in the public repository, but there are internal NuGets, things that you use within your company, or just things that you think, I don't want other people to use these. These are mine. That's it. I don't want to support someone else using this code, right? So if you're going to go ahead and do that, then that is something that you're probably better off doing as part of the YAML GitHub Actions. You can do all of that stuff. All of that stuff you can do within the C# Cake stuff, because there are a lot of extensions for it, right? A lot of extra NuGet packages that you can go ahead and use, and we'll actually see another one today, in order to make all of that work locally. But as you add more stuff, it actually does become a little bit harder to run that locally. Unfortunately, some of the earlier builds that I've done with this have kind of, even though I can run it locally on my machine, I don't want to, because I do have to do some more setup, right? It's not just simply, hey, hit F5 in Visual Studio and it runs to test it. It's more work than that. So whenever you're writing your C# Cake stuff for your build or deploy or whatever you're using, just keep that in mind, right? What do you want to be able to easily test on your machine locally versus what, unfortunately, has to run on the build server, right? All right, and then in closing all of these slides before we get to the code, remember, these are all very opinionated choices that I have. These are my opinions. If you have opinions on this stuff, definitely let me know. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, etc., you can go ahead and throw them in as comments to this YouTube video, or you can go ahead and find me on LinkedIn and Blue Sky are the two. Just search Programmer Al. You'll go ahead and find me. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the code. All right, so this is going to be, and you know what? This actually does matter before we get into it. Just as a reminder, we're on number 9, right? It's the same title. And I want to take a step back and just remind you that we do have a separate folder for each of the other videos. All of this code, everything that I've shown you, is online on GitHub, and there's a reason that I'm mentioning this stuff right now. So I'm going to come back to that a little bit later, but I just wanted to remind you that that's the organization of how this stuff works. Cool. So minimize that. Back to the build. So in the previous video, we created a build that will compile our application, run our unit tests, and then it'll go ahead and publish code out to a zip folder, right? So it'll publish, it'll run our ASP.NET code build in release mode and put all of those files into a little zip folder. And we're gonna make 2 changes to this cake build script. I need to stop calling it a script. I know it's not a script because we're writing it as like a full-on application. I just, it's the common phrase, right? The build script. Anyway, so we're going to be making 2 changes to that. So the first one, as I scroll through here, is that we're going to make a few changes to these feedback paths. So we'll do that in a second. And the other one, as I scroll down, is in the publish application task. Remember the zip package that we create? We're not doing that anymore. We're instead going to change our application to go ahead and compile to a Docker image, and we're going to go ahead and publish that out to a registry. So those are the 2 things that we need to change here in the build. There will be a few other things that we have to do, but we'll start with the simple things. So I'll go ahead and scroll on up to these feedback paths, load from context. I'll hit F12, and there are really just a few small things. The main things are, hey, this publish directory right here, we're not using that because we're not publishing to a directory. We're going to start publishing to an image, a container image now. There are also a couple of other things. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste from the other code, the other screen that I've already run and tested this from. And just for my own simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and replace this whole thing. So there isn't much that happened. I think I renamed a couple of properties. Probably shouldn't have done that. But we got rid of those 2 project ones. We added a solution directory. I'll mention that a little bit later, but that's just so we kind of know the root path. And going back as the example, remember when we're talking about, 0, 1, 2, etc., right? So the root path is going to be this folder, right, where the solution is. Because we are going to need to know that for the build, and that is specifically just for this, because it's, we when we make our GitHub action, we want to be able to build a specific folder, right? So I'm going to show this off for video 9. Later on, we're going to have video 10, and maybe we'll have some changes to that one. So we want to make sure that when we do the build, we're doing it to the correct folder. Right? So that's why we have to add a little bit of extra stuff there for that. And then the last one down here is this image tag. So the image tag is the tag that we're going to be using for the image. We'll go ahead, I'll talk about that one a little bit more later, but for now we just need that unique ID for the container image that we're going to go ahead and create. And that's it. Those are really the 2 things that we made changes to. So back over here to the actual program itself. We already have some red issues over here on in Visual Studio. I'm going to scroll down. The very first one is in this clean task. We don't actually need this anymore. We can go ahead and delete it. We needed it before just to help us, locally when we were publishing to something locally, but we don't need it at all anymore because, again, we're publishing out to an image, so that's gone. Perfect. Now we can go ahead and scroll down, and we are back in the Publish Applications task. So when we publish the feedback API, instead of publishing to a file, I'm repeating myself again, I'm sorry. We're going to go ahead and publish out to Docker. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy paste again from my other monitor over here. And I've lost my mouse and now I found it. Okay, so instead of publish, we're going to go ahead and have that. Whoops, I did not copy this line over here. Instead of publish, there we go. Let's see, this, actually, you know what, this is a bad name. Let's call this publish publish image. Yeah, that's probably better. Okay, cool. That name, unfortunately, was a little too specific. That was, you know, hey, saying specifically we're publishing to Docker, to GitHub, which we are going to do later, but, you know, right now we want to do all of this stuff locally on our machine. I don't want to mention anything about GitHub within this build right here. So, let's talk about what this is, and we'll talk about the red squigglies in a second. But what we're doing as far as publishing our image is first of all, we're going to specify the working directory, which, again, if I go back over here, that's, you know, this spot, right? You know, 09 or video 8 or 7, etc. And really starting here at 9, and then, you know, 10, 11, 12, etc. So that's that part. The project path, because we need to know where the project is that we're building. And then the very last one is that image tag. So that's going to come in. And so we're passing all of these in from our feedback paths. As far as this application goes, we only have the one. If I wanted to just pass in this one feedback app paths, I could. But hey, maybe in the future I add a second thing and we're going to have multiple images, right? So let's keep that a little bit separated. Okay, so first we need the path to the Docker file, which doesn't exist yet. We're going to create that in a second. Then we're going to do the same thing we actually did in the previous version of the compilation, where we deleted those app settings files. Really, we should be deleting like all of those extra files that we don't have, but this one's simple. And then lastly, we're going to actually go ahead and set some settings for our build. And these are things like, you know, where's the Docker file, that image tag that's passed in, you know, where we're building from, all that stuff. That's it. That's pretty simple, right? Just like your standard CLI when you're going to go ahead and run your, you know, Docker file stuff. That's what we're using. So let's go ahead and get rid of these squiggly lines. The reason those are there are because we need a new NuGet package. So I'm going to search cake.docker, and that'll be that first one. Let's go ahead and install it. Give that a second. Awesome. That is finished. We can close that. And then we need to add a using statement. There we go. Using cake.docker. Perfect. Control-Shift-S, build. Looking at the bottom left, waiting for it to say it's done. It should compile. Everything should be perfect. Build succeeded. Awesome. Now, before we test this, there's one other thing we actually have to do. I have to go to the app, because I mentioned there is no Docker file over here. So thankfully, with our IDE, I'm just going to go ahead and right-click the project and add Docker support. All right, and I like all of the defaults there. Container build context. I'm trying to remember. Yes, that is the context we want. We want it at the root of the code, essentially, basically that same folder where the solution file is. So awesome. We'll hit OK. Control-Shift-S, and let's just look at this really quickly to make sure we know what's going on. We're going to set some endpoints. We're going to copy in some code. We're definitely using release. Publish all of that stuff. Cool. Feedback, etc. All right, cool. All of this looks good. The only thing I was worried about was I did forget, you know, the path, essentially where we're doing this from. So that all looks good. Cool. So all of that is good. Now we can't test this yet because if I scroll up, let's see, there was one other thing. Oh no, did I miss? No, okay, no, we should be good. The other thing we have to do, go to our launch settings. Now, last time we had to set these launch settings, right? So now we need to change this to what the current one is. And so I'm just going to go ahead and check over here. Let's see, our root directory. Oh, sorry, you're going to have to watch me edit a couple of these. If I go over here, let's just change this part. 9. All right. And so notice we're actually going to the full root of the project. And that's because we're assuming that the root path is there. It's that root. And then we actually do have to add another one that I forgot to call out. So let me copy paste that first, and then we'll talk about it. So scroll over here to the right. And we are adding the feedback API image tag, and we're just going to go ahead and give it something, you know, feedback API latest local, just to note that hey, this is something we're running locally on our machine. So let's go ahead and save that. And I did forget to mention what this is, so let's talk about that right now. So over here in our feedback paths, if I go back to the content or go back to the class where we're specifying that, we are specifying, hey, let's load a parameter. So this parameter, like just like in our main section, right over here, where we have this load parameter, we also have that load parameter there. Just for simplicity, I just copy pasted it, right? Normally we should put that in like a utilities helper class, whatever. It's only used once, it's fine, it's okay right here. So we're gonna go ahead and load it, feedback API image, and then we're just using that here. So it's grabbing another thing from the command line in here. It is the one thing that's not exactly hard coded, but it is important because it's used within this context, within the context of paths for the feedback API. So that's it. That's all I really wanted to call out for that. So that means that now I should be able to go ahead and hit F5 and run this. And let's give that a second. Oh, that opened in another screen. Let me move that over here. Where did that go? All right, I don't know where that is. Oh no, now I'm moving things around into different monitors. There we go. Hey, cool. All right, awesome. So looks like our Docker build is running. Now I'm gonna go ahead and open my Docker desktop and notice, oh, looks like it just finished. Yep, hey, perfect. Cool, so the Docker, the publish task right here ran, and looks like we ran our Docker file. Now we have our image, all that stuff. Looks like, oh, 13 seconds to do that, cool. So this is the thing I wanted to show over here, the feedback API. Notice our latest-local, that's that hard-coded image tag that we had, and all of that stuff, and I can go ahead and click on it, and we'll see all this stuff like you would see for any other image. Awesome. So we now are able to compile our application, publish it directly to an image on our local machine. If we wanted to start it, we can. I don't have any config, so it's going to fail on startup, so I'm not even going to try it. So perfect, we're done with that. That's exactly what we wanted. Now let's do the hard part, I guess. Now the confusing part. Let's do the confusing part. So the reason I call it the confusing part is because we're not able to run this locally, right? That's its own hassle. So I've already created the build pipeline right here, the GitHub Actions for us, and that's already here. I'm going to go ahead and talk about it, what exactly we're doing. So I'm going to scroll down to the steps, the individual things we're doing, and a lot of these, the first half of these things are the standard of what you would expect normally when you see compiling a .NET application through GitHub Actions. Then we'll talk about the things we're doing later. So check out the code. Cool, easy enough. Make sure we're using the proper version of .NET. Cool, and that is controlled up here through an environment variable. Cool, good there. Then we do our cake frosting build. Now you can do .NET run, project, whatever. Now this is going to use the root directory path. So this is all that path stuff that I was talking about earlier, right? So if I scroll up, I have this environment variable. This is going to be our root namespace. And we're actually going to pass in the build folder. So if I scroll up again, this GitHub action, just for the purposes of demos, is only a manual process. So someone has to go in and click it. I'm the only one on this personal repo, so I'm going to be the only one going in and clicking it. And so I have to enter a value for build folder. So this is where I'm going to type in, whatever folder we're using, right? In this case, it'll be 09-GitHub Actions build pipeline, right? Whichever folder it is that we want to use, that's what's going to go in there. And so then we have our root directory. Cool. So we have this, so that's the root directory and the path to the project we want to build. So there's the build, and then I'll scroll to the right, and then we're talking about, hey, here are our inputs, just like you saw me enter in that the launch settings.json file over here, right? Same concept, but that's right here because now we're just running directly through the CLI. Now, there is separately a task that we can go ahead and run within GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions has a ton of tasks that other people have written. I could go ahead and use that. Someone actually, since making the previous video, someone has mentioned that to me, and thank you for that. I just haven't had the time to really play around with it, so I'm sticking to the thing that I already know, which is just run the .NET project directly using .NET Run. I'm sure both ways work just as well. The other one, if we're using an actual task, does add a bit more context, I'm sure, and I would probably prefer to use that one once I actually play with it. But for now, this is the one that I know. I'm used to it. and you know, for now it's good enough, right? But my opinion would be we're probably better off using that actual task. All right, so this is going to go ahead and run build our application, and it's going to push it to the local running on that device instance of Docker, you know, that container registry, you know, whatever's running on the action runner. So keep that in mind. That image is published there on that local machine where the runner is, the GitHub Actions runner is running on. Cool. All right, so we're going to scroll down. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and make a release. Now, this part I know is probably a little weird. Why are we making a release? The reason for that is because I want to go ahead and link these build artifacts directly to the release. Now, we're not actually linking a lot of stuff to this. In this case, we are going to end up just linking the one image that we create. Usually in other builds, I'll have like metadata files or other things that we want to go ahead and include with a specific release. And so your question, I'm sure, is probably why a release and not a build. And so the only reason is because from what I can tell, a build will delete all of its artifacts after 90 days. A release won't. So we're just going to go ahead and leave it as a pre-release release. And if this is an application that ever makes its way to production, then someone can go and manually change it to not a pre-release, right? An actual release. So that's my general strategy with using this. I would prefer to use it as a build because that feels like it's more correct of a thing to do in that situation. But this is this is the world we live in. So okay, we're doing that. All right. Now the last two tasks that we're going to do within this GitHub action is to actually be able to push our image that we created from locally running on the runner up to the GitHub container registry. So first we're going to go ahead and log in to the Docker Hub, to the GitHub owned registry, and then we're going to go ahead and push our image. And so we're just going to run the command docker push, and we're pushing that tag, right? The tag that we have set up, right? So if I scroll up here, feedback image tag, this does have to be the full name of it. So the GitHub and my name, my account name on GitHub, and then the full path, right? So this is going to be, we're just going to call this opinionated, blah, blah, blah. We'll include the build folder in the name of the image itself, so that way we know, which image, this is the build from, video 9 from 10, et cetera, right? And then as far as our version goes, we're just going to go ahead and use the, oops, sorry, too far. We're going to go ahead and use the version that is the GitHub run ID. So it's something that is guaranteed to be unique. It's not a number we're going to remember, but that doesn't matter, right? Let's automate it. Let's make that simple. I do see a lot of people, as far as releases and release numbers, they do like to specify, numbers for it. I think that's a waste of time. I think that gets too complicated. We have tools over here that can go ahead and give us a number. No one's going to care or remember what that number is. And as far as, the publicly accessible number, the number you tell people, that's just a title, right? That's you can just call that whatever you want, but internally you're going to have a different number. Just like, a lot of other software. I mean, Windows. I'm using Windows right now, and I have no idea what the build number is of Windows or the version, but I'm told it's something. I'm sure I can look that up, but that doesn't tie directly to a build, right? Same concept here. Automate what you can is really what I'm getting at. So I think I've talked about this, and yeah, I guess we're good to go ahead and do this. So let's go ahead and say added 09 folder. So let's go ahead and commit that. Let's push it directly to the main branch, because why not? I like to live on the edge. I don't like to live on the edge. I'm the only one on this, right? It's my own stuff. So let's go over here, and I already have the repo open in my machine. So let me go ahead and refresh, and good. We now have this folder. So let me just go ahead and copy that name, because I'm going to go to the actions, build, and let's run the workflow, and we're going to run for that folder, and let's run it. And this is where I find out how much editing I'm going to have to do on this video, because I'm not sure how much of this is even going to work or not. So like I said, I copy pasted from another build that I kind of already have, but you're always gonna have what, 1 or 20 failed instances just because of paths. Paths are just the worst thing. So looks like we're missing parameter build configuration. That's fine. Let's go back over here. I don't care about that. I think build configuration release. We don't need that at all. We're just gonna hard code that because that's all that matters. All right, cool. Hard coded variable in 09 build. There we go. Let's commit it. Let's push it. All right. Again, I think that's another thing that happens with copy pasting some of these things. So sorry about that. Let's try this again. Run that build. Refresh the page because it doesn't just show up for some reason. Refresh it a second time. Hey, there we go. Cool. So, all right. So hopefully this will just work on the second time, and I don't have to start editing out any of these rantings that you're watching me doing. Just like back in that video number 4? 3? 4? One of them. I had to do that in a previous one. I can't remember which one it was. Let's say 3 or 4. The thing I've been saying. All right, cool. So compiling the application. So far, good. Awesome. Publish task. All right, so now this is compiling, creating that Docker image. Great. So extracting, good. A lot of numbers. This is taking longer than the 13 seconds I think it ran on my machine. To be fair, I think part of that was I had kind of tested some stuff earlier, so I think some of that stuff was cached a little bit. Hey, there we go. 25 seconds is what it looks like. Cool. So moving forward, good. Logged into Docker Hub, created that release. Publishing or pushing the image. And awesome. Looks like this build has succeeded. If I refresh all that stuff, perfect. It looks good. So now let's actually go ahead and look at what we have, right? So I can go ahead and look at my code over here, and I can look at my releases. So this is the one release we've created with this number. The ends in 869. Alrighty. Now again, no other files were included in here. It's very common, right, to include like a metadata file or something, right? We just don't happen to have anything here. But now I'm going to go to my profile, and I'm going to click on packages, and I only have the one package, right? It's the one that we just pushed. So opinionated, blah, 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 blah. And here's the full path to it, right? And it looks like, yep, and we have the 09 GitHub Actions build, right? So that's the file the folder path. So next time when I do this for video 10, I'll say 10 dash whatever. All right. Awesome. So that's it. That's everything. We got this working. We only had to make quite a few changes, and we only had to run that GitHub action twice, which is amazing. That is a win. That's like, it's like bowling a 290 in bowling. I don't know what that means. All I know is 300 is the highest you can get to, just because of that episode of The Simpsons. But I assume 290 is really hard. All right, I'm ranting now. So next video, video 10, we're actually going to go ahead and take this build, and we're going to start working on creating a deployment for this image. And so again, that's all going to be done in C#. I know we've kind of moved past the whole ASP.NET specific part of me building this application, but it's all being done in C#, and that's really the important part for all of this. So we're going to use a tool called Pulumi, P-U-L-U-M-I is how it's spelled, and that's my preferred infrastructure as code tool for being able to actually publish stuff out. So that'll be fun next time we do this, and until then, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, etc., again, you can go ahead and put anything here in the YouTube comments, or send me any messages, direct message or comment, whatever. Blue Sky or LinkedIn, those are the two social medias that I use. Just search Program Morale, you'll go ahead and find me. All right, until next time, take care, everyone. Bye.